I couldn't have stepped up on that, I must admit. Well done. You've been at Aflac for 50 years, I think, this year, so congratulations.
Yes, well.
Fantastic run. And I think 1990 was when you became CEO, so you're the second longest tenured CEO in the US behind Warren Buffett.
That's correct.
So congratulations again. I think there's, let's just say that's not the normal tenure of a CEO these days. It's a tough job, so really looking forward to hearing about that. But before we start, let's try this, all right? You've all got a duck on your chairs. Can you please pick it up? I want you to squeeze it at the same time, not yet, on my countdown. And we're going to try and get I don't know what it's called, a flock of ducks quacking at the same time. So on the count of 3, 2, 1. It's still going. And that's it, by the way, for the rest of the event. All right? That's our deal. So let's start there, Dan, because you came up with that idea, and it was, at the time, you know, everybody associates the Aflac with the duck now, but at the time, that must have been quite a bold move. What did people say when you sort of went in and said, I think we should go with this theme?
Well, we started advertising in 1990, and up to that point, we didn't have much name recognition. Our actual name was American Family Life Assurance Company, which is the acronym Aflac. And we couldn't use American because there were over 200 insurance companies with American. There were 50 with family in it, and there's actually an American Family Life Insurance Company in Wisconsin, which you all know, property casualty. So our people told us we needed to end up having some other, change the name. But if you changed the name, you had to turn in your license to all 50 states and then reissue them. So we ended up going with the acronym. So we go with the acronym, and for 10 years we try to build the name recognition, and we only have 3% name recognition. After 10 years, we're only at 9. And we said, this isn't gonna work. And so I told them to go out and do anything they wanted as long as it was in good taste. And we were really the first ones to come back with using humor in what was considered grounds that you weren't supposed to go in. You had Prudential and The Rock. You had all the things that were very serious. So here you were making fun of your name. And we put out different bids. We came back with 45 different versions, and we tested the Aflac duck, and it nationwide, the best commercial we'd ever tested was a 12. And that was the national average for financial services. Banks do better. It's all about how much interaction you have with people. And so this particular commercial, the Aflac duck, tested a 27, 2.5 times better. So we decided to go with it. But one thing that was very interesting is I tested a commercial with Ray Romano. At that time, he had the #1 TV show in America. And he was playing with children with building blocks, and it formed Aflac. That tested an 18. So I called some of my friends that were CEOs and said, what would you do? I got one that tested an 18, one test a 27. And a couple of my friends said, one in particular said, you gotta be kidding. Nobody gets fired doing 50% better, go with the Ray Romano. And I had promised that I would do whichever one tested the highest. I went with it. A year passes and our name recognition in 3 years jumps to 90%. We end up doubling our sales. And today, we spend about $120 million on advertising. Geico spends $3 billion. Allstate, State Farm spends about 1.8 billion. So we've been able to take the Aflac Duck and use it in public relations in very good ways, and also do key advertising. So it's worked very well. To give you an idea on these ducks, we also have a big operation in Japan. 70% of our company's in Japan. We insure 1 out of 4 households. But we have a cancer center, and we donate the funds of this. And believe it or not, we have sold or given away 50 million ducks, to give you an idea.
Yeah, that's an incredible story. Have you got any notable stories about the duck over the years? Because there was one time it went to the New York Stock Exchange and caused a bit of havoc, from what I remember.
Yeah, well, we took a live duck there, yeah. And let me tell you something. You can't control the bowels of a live duck. I'm going to just say it that way. But what I will tell you, an interesting story is that we sponsored an event at Disney Studios in 1990, the year we came out with it. And we were, like we are here, the debate was whether or not to put out ducks. And I thought how embarrassing it would be. There were about 500 people there if they didn't take the ducks. So I didn't know whether to do it or not. And I finally decided, put the ducks on the table. So I put the ducks on the table. And at the end of the event, big event, charity event, most of them were gone. I was thrilled. And the head of Disney Studios was sitting beside me. And I looked, and it was like this. And I said, hey, what's in behind here? And he said, let me explain something to you. Daffy Duck is in charge around here, and Donald Duck. But I'm taking this to my daughter because I think she'll like it. And I knew right then we had a hit.
You're on a winner, for sure. And you've evolved it over the years into this fantastic special Aflac Duck. Tell us a little bit about that, because that does such an amazing work for sick kids.
Well, it's interesting. This is where public relations came in. Carol Cohn, she's here, I saw her.
She is, yeah. Carol? Yes.
She played a role with Spratel, and they brought us the idea of doing this. And now these ducks cost $15. These cost $250. But we give them to every child that has pediatric cancer in the United States. All you have to do is ask us for them, and we send them. And it has been something that has touched oncologists, pediatric oncologists all over the country. Our cancer center, the Aflac Cancer Center at Children's Healthcare in Atlanta, is rated number 7 by U.S. News and World Report, and it's also the largest cancer center in America for pediatrics. And we donate to them, but it is technology that helps them. For example, there's a port on there for the child shows the doctor or the nurse they're going to port the duck, and then you're going to get ported. And it helps them adjust, and it's worked very well for us. And so we've given away, I think, 24,000 of those. We're spending about $10 million on that program, the company is. But through the donations and everything we've donated since we started the Aflac Cancer Center 27 years ago, we've given $170 million. And the vast majority of that have come from the employees and our salespeople, where we've donated funds to help build it.
Yeah, and the special Aflac Duck is the only duck to have appeared on the PRWeek podcast. So there you go.
Well, good.
So that was obviously a highlight for the duck. So you've been recognized for purpose as a business and a CEO for many years. Tell us how you do that, because it's not easy, is it? How do you imbue purpose in everything you do? And what are the biggest challenges to doing that in your time as CEO?
Nobody minds you giving money away if the company's doing well. It's when they don't do well, they complain. And you have to, and generally you go through cycles of business where sometimes they're good and sometimes they're bad. I believe it's a good business decision. I believe that if I'm debating whether to buy an insurance policy from Company X or Company Y, and Company X is making it a better place for all of us to live, then I'd rather buy it from them than others, and that applies to any product. I think it's important that you get that message out of what you're going to do. Now, the interesting story is in both my special Aflac duck and even in the Aflac Cancer Center, they were never our ideas. Somebody came to us from Atlanta, we are located in Columbus, and said, hey, we wondered if you might give $25,000 to a cancer center that we're raising money for. And I said, let me look at that. And I got to looking at it. There was a naming opportunity, $3 million. And I said, we had never given philanthropically, that's 27 years ago, to any one issue. We'd give to everything, the United Ways, the American Cancer Societies, anything you could think of that all companies kind of go across and give a certain amount. But to really focus on one thing, and I've always been as a CEO, more what I call rifle a shot instead of shotgun approach, is I want to have one thing that I really target. It just hit me broad. We sell health insurance, we sell cancer insurance. Why not give back? And I said, we might give you $3 million. Sheila I just about had to pick her off the floor when I told her, because she was asking for $25,000. And she told the story of her daughter. Her name was Vicki Riedel. She told the story of her daughter, who was at that time in Atlanta, who was 4 years old and needed a bone marrow transplant. And they didn't do it anywhere in Georgia or in the South. And they had to go all the way to the Hutch, they call it, in Seattle. And that they wanted to build the Center of Excellence. And they said, we met as a group in the company. We said we would do it. And they had to decide whether or not they wanted a corporation's name on it. They said, well, we'll name it Amos. I said, no, I don't have any interest. I'm interested in the company because I can get people. And that's what we did. And then from there, I did a matching grant to all the employees up to a certain amount of money and said, okay, if you'll give, I'll match it. And I matched it that year. And every year I give money. And it's worked very well.
What are the biggest challenges? Because, the Business Roundtable made a statement on giving all, there's some water down there, Dan. Giving all stakeholders an equal say in the running of the company. But as you said, when times get tough especially, it comes back to shareholder value, doesn't it? And it is a challenge, and it does go up and down. How do you keep that mission and ambition at the heart of what you do as a company when you are getting pushback, whether it's from shareholders, whether it's from analysts, or whether it's from the media?
Well, people ask me, you've been CEO 34 years. How have you stayed around so long? And it's really changed. And I'm going to take one of those. Yeah, thank you. It's really changed in that in the old days, everybody was kind of happy and were satisfied. You made your numbers. Nothing else ever came up. Stock going up. And now you've got the great divide on just about any issue you can think of. Doesn't matter what it is. We can get an argument started. So I'm always trying to figure out how to be Switzerland on most issues, except running the company, because ultimately it's the shareholder return that matters. And if you're making your numbers, then they'll support you giving back because you tell them they go hand in hand.
But they're not mutually exclusive, are they? Because actually doing that good is good business, and that's a compelling argument when you can hit both of those marks, yeah?
Yeah, and the research shows it over and over again. If you ask people, the hard part is communicating the message of that you've got these things to people, and how do you do it? Because if you're paying money to get it out, then you're taking away from money that you would do to sell product. So you have to find ways, and public relations makes that difference. Inez and her team going out and giving these away, we get enormous amounts of hits with local stations that want to carry the story about us giving the ducks away and what's taking place with my special Aflac duck, or people that take these with them home, the small ones and whatever. So, for example, these ducks are $15 a piece. So we've donated $3,000 to the Aflac Cancer Center in honor of all of you. Our agents buy them, and they give them out themselves to whoever they want as part of their marketing scheme.
Well, thank you for that. Remember, if you've got questions for Dan, enter them on Slido, and I'll feed them into the conversation. Dan, studies have shown that people are placing a lot more trust in business, with the decline in trust in institutions, in the media, with a febrile social media environment. You've got so much experience of business over the years and branding. How do you think it's changed over the years? And maybe COVID was part of that as well, and maybe it supercharged it. But how has trust in business changed in the time that you've been in charge?
Well, I think there's always cynics in every field, everywhere. But I think as we are becoming more and more transparent and keep information, I've always said bad news does not improve with age. It's not like a wine. The longer you hold it, the worse it gets. And I think ability of corporations to be transparent makes an enormous difference. And that's why I think working hand in hand with public relations and keeping them engaged of what's going on makes a big difference in how you operate. Unfortunately, most of those things that we need to tell public relations are potential issues that are problems, not good issues. Everybody wants to be in charge of releasing the good stuff. It's the others that no one wants to be in charge of. And so keeping them engaged in those issues of whatever it might be is very important. And the stronger the brand, the more you have to lose, and you have to be twice as careful. I say it takes a lifetime to build a brand and about 3 seconds to lose it.
Yeah, and that's when the people in this room run toward the fire, and that's when you need those public relations professionals. I've got a question from the audience on that. Dan, I love your authenticity and your philanthropic passion. Is there a crisis when you believe that PR or comms saved the day at Aflac?
Oh, they've saved the day a lot of times. A lot of times it's things you didn't do, but it's the perception. So you have to be careful of. And I can't think of, well, I'll give you a great example. I do have one. I got a call from our local newspaper. This was about 12 years ago. And we had an earthquake, the tsunami that hit Japan. And the person that called me said, we just got the information that Gilbert Gottfried had done these jokes about, and it said, like one of them was something about, if you haven't seen them, you'll see another one floating down the river, and it was just totally tasteless. And so,
and he was
the voice of the Aflac duck, excuse me. He was the voice of the Aflac duck. So they said to me, back in the old days, they would have said, we've got a time that it's going to run, and you've got to have it in by whatever, 7 o'clock at night, whatever. I was in the new movement toward the internet, and he was going to put it on. And I said, well, how about giving me a little bit of time? And he said, no, I'm going to run the story. I said, well, will you give me 15 minutes? And he said, why 15 minutes? I said, because I don't think you're going to give me any longer. I'll take whatever you'll give me. I said, okay. So I called our people and I said, fire Gilbert Gottfried. And they said, What do you mean? I said, I told them what happened. They said, no, we need to think about it. I said, okay, if we think about it, the headlines are Gilbert Gottfried does this, Aflac debates what to do. I said, we're dead before we start. So we get together as our team and literally call him back and said, we fired him. Now, the problem was we had to take every commercial we had off the air immediately. But we ended up taking a terrible situation and making it into a great one. We then decided to advertise that we were looking for the voice of the Aflac duck. And CBS News did a big story on it. And we had over 11,500 people apply for the job throughout the country. And the Aflac voice is a person from Minnesota that none of us knew, and he makes over 100 grand a year just quacking those 3 words.
It's a good gig. So you stem the flow quickly, classic crisis comms, stem the flow quickly, make it a short story rather than one that
That's exactly
goes
right.
on for 2 or 3 months, and then move the narrative on.
But you have to keep the public relations people up to date on what's going on. You can't get them up to date fast enough. So if they're not in knowing what's happening operationally, you have all kind of problems. So you've got to make sure that they're in the key meetings and updated on what's going on.
Yeah, you've got to have them in the room and involved in those strategic
That's right.
discussions. Yeah, that's changed, hasn't it, over the 30 years, I would imagine.
Yeah, it has changed.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, you don't need but one crisis where you don't have them that you won't ever do it again either.
This is a bit of an open goal for a PR-loving person. Dan, do you believe that PR is the best money a company can spend? Said someone in a room full of PR pros.
Well, you've really got a guy that supports it. Now, we've talked about the negative side, but the positive side, let me tell you, one of the things I'm the proudest of is how we have the same brand recognition as a Geico, or very close, within a few points. And they're spending 20 times what we're spending. I promise you, PR plays a big role in that, is that we've done, or the PR department has done a stellar job in doing that. So I do think, and I think I can prove it to do this. Now, if I've got to start one, it's hard to do, but once you got the brand, keeping it PR can make a bigger difference from a positive perspective.
So you don't think a gecko with an English accent's the way to go? Sorry, that was a personal question. Got an interesting question from David Hogg, who's our keynote tomorrow morning, and very serious topic. Given the high level of gun violence and especially gun suicide in the US, what role do you think the insurance industry could play in reducing gun deaths?
Well, I think that one of the big changes, I would never have gotten that question 20 years ago, even 15 years ago. And what I've tried to do as a company is to not get in the middle of issues that are political in nature. They are, I could tell you how I personally think, but if I do the company, then almost every issue you can name, it'll be 40%, 40%, and 20% that varies. And I just don't go there. I say I'm not a politician. I have my own personal opinions, but that's the same importance as your personal opinions. And so we try to accompany, we think gun violence is terrible. We don't want that to happen. We hate to see what's going on in Israel. We hate to see what's going on with innocent people being killed. But are we going to get into the real decisions? No, we're going to go with the politicians and have our voices as individuals, but not as a company.
So it's the difference between acting purposefully and making statements on social issues. Those are two different things.
That's exactly right.
Right. Question from the audience: would you have ever imagined being where you are today 40 years ago? I mean, did you think you were going to have such a long run as?
Well, you know, I have to tell you, my family started the company. We never owned the company. We sold stock door to door to raise the money to start it. And my uncle, who was the CEO, passed away from cancer when he was 65. And so I started at 39. And I'm now 72. So I have been around a long time. And no, I don't know that I thought 34 years I'd ever make it. You know, I laughed when you said something about 50 years. I hadn't really thought about being around 50 years. And then I went, damn, I'm old. But I don't feel old. I love the business. I enjoy doing it. And it's been fun, and as long as I can. My wife threw me out of the house with COVID. She said, look, there can only be one CEO of this house, and it ain't you. So I still like it.
Yeah, that's a good one. Question from the audience. You're very decisive and intuitive. What do you recommend to PR leaders to help their CEOs become more like you?
Well, I don't ever try to tell anybody to try to be like me, but what I will tell you is that there's two groups of people. There are IQ people and there are EQ people, and I'm more of an EQ person, and I think that's the common sense element of running things and doing things, and it's. If you can get both, that's great. But you've got to be careful, and yes, CEOs have to have EQ. And if they don't have it, they're going to get in trouble unless they keep somebody close to them, like a public relations person that can help guide them and lead them. I always make sure Inez or one of her staff goes with me, because I want them listening to what I'm saying. And if I'm saying something's wrong, I want them to grab me and say, stop. You didn't mean that, did you? And I said, oh, no, I didn't mean it. I don't even know what I said. But you want to be careful. And so what may be in your brain, you didn't communicate exactly right. So I don't go anywhere to speak to any groups that I don't take somebody that's not listening to what I said to make sure they know me and they know what it meant. And I think that's important.
You mentioned this a bit earlier, but how popular, 70% of your business is in Japan. Somebody's asking, how popular is the duck in Japan?
They've sold 27 million, and the U.S. has sold 24 million. So to give you an idea. So we insure 1 out of 4 households in Japan. So that's about tracking, 1 out of 4, 27 million versus 108 million population, so about the same.
And there are a lot of mascots and gimmicks in the insurance sort
Right.
of advertising industry. How do you determine, and someone's asking, how do you determine if introducing a mascot is a good idea for your company?
Well, I didn't. I just took a chance.
Yeah.
And
Did anyone say you were quackers?
Yeah, well, let me tell you this. This really happened. I told the board of directors that I'm going to test. Well, I majored in risk management and insurance in school. And there are 3 principles of risk management and insurance, and I use it every day. Don't risk a lot for a little. Don't risk more than you can afford to lose, and consider the odds. If you take those 3 things and use them, they'll work. In the case of the Aflac duck, I tested those principles. I thought it was a reasonable risk. We're in the risk business. We're not avoiding risk, we're managing risk. So I said, this is worth taking the chance. But when I told people that we were going to take a duck, and that duck was going to quack Aflac, there was dead silence because we hadn't made the commercial yet. And I realized right then not to tell anybody else, but I had just bet my entire life on a damn duck.
Dan, it's been great to talk to you. One last question from the audience. This has got to have come from either one of the PRWeek team or an English person, because he says, or she says, who would win in a fight, the duck or the gecko?
Oh, we'd kill the gecko.
Thank you so much, Dan.
Thank you.
Great chatting to you.